Well, let's welcome the Reverend Mark Fowler.
So good morning, everyone. First of all, welcome to your new home. It is such a joy to be with you on this first, and I was reminded as I was sitting here that the first day of seminary for me, our seminary had moved to a new space. And one of our deans sat on the edge of her chair, because some things you have to lean into when you say, and she said to us, "I want you to know that you're sitting in answered prayer." So in addition to the space and in addition to all that this space will provide, I encourage you to think beyond the space and think that you are sitting in intention realized. Whether you said it out loud or not, this physical space is the result of intention realized. And that is something that we can carry with us all the time, every day. As always, I just want to thank you all. I missed you so much. So I'm so glad to be with you again. The theme for this month is renewal. And I also can't ignore my own upbringing and recognize that it is also Palm Sunday. And I'm going to do my best to weave a little bit of that in this idea, and I'm staying with this theme of the myth of things. And so today I want to talk a little bit about the myth of renewal. That there are perhaps some conceptions and ideas that we have that actually limit what we can fully experience in the idea of spiritual renewal and how that plays out in our lives. So one of my go-to sources, Merriam-Webster, says this about renewal, that it is the act of extending the period of time when something is effective or valid. I'll say that again. The act of extending the period of time when something is effective or valid. It's the act of renewing something. And that it's also the state of being made new, fresh, or strong again. And the first myth I think about renewal is that renewal somehow requires death. That there has to be almost this state of misery in order for renewal to take place. Like you literally have to be at the very end, drawing your last breath, crying your last tear before renewal can happen. And it seems to me that if we're talking about the state of something that has some strength to it, that has some vitality to it, has some effectiveness to it, has some validity to it, then it doesn't mean that death is required for renewal. It's almost like, as opposed to saying, when talking about something, I used to weigh 170 pounds. That may not be your number. That's mine. Because there was a time when I used to weigh 170 pounds. As opposed to trying to renew that, which is also tied up in age, which was about 30 years ago, I used to weigh 170 pounds. I could start out, if I'm actually trying to renew that relationship and renew that experience, and say that I am 212 pounds today, and I seek to renew health and vitality in my life. Just a slight difference, but you actually start from what is effective and you start from what is valid rather than completely disregarding that you have some effectiveness or some validity in that area that you want to breathe life and light into. And I think the other thing about this myth is that renewal is not the same as creation. Creation is starting from nothing. It's the void. It's the all, where you step into the all and you actually say, I am, you begin to call forth things that are not as if they are. That's different than renewing something that exists already. So the second myth is that renewal is transformation. That it's somehow the same as changing something from one state to another. Because when we talk about transformation, we are talking about a transform, to change form, change being, as opposed to restore being. They're different things. And it's interesting that transformation is not required for renewal, but that renewal can actually be the part of the process leading to transformation. So I want to read very quickly from the book of John, where it talks a little bit about what was going on around the time of the palms being thrown into the street when Jesus kind of came through this large group of people riding a donkey. And it says that, and this is in chapter 12, when the large crowd of the Jews learned that Jesus was there, they came not only on account of him, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priests made plans to put Lazarus to death as well. Because on account of him, on account of Lazarus, and what Lazarus represented, many of the Jews were going away and believing in Jesus. Now, what's interesting is that whenever Palm Sunday comes, and I know that there are a variety of backgrounds of, walks that we've all been on to get to this moment that we're in today, but you don't really hear much about Lazarus on Palm Sunday. What you hear about is the humility of Jesus, about the fulfillment of the prophecy, etc. But I think it's worth noting that on that day, that multitude of people did not just come to see Jesus. They came to see Lazarus, who for whatever reason, because one, Jesus is not the only person during this time who performed miracles. There were people all around doing all kinds of miracles. If you've never even read the Bible, you remember when you watched, what's that movie that they always used to show around Easter? The Ten Commandments. You remember when they're in Pharaoh's chambers, the first time Moses goes there and Aaron throws his stick down and it turns into a snake. And what happens? The priests of Egypt put their sticks down and they turn into snakes. So it's not that these kinds of wonders never happened or that Moses was the only one. It wasn't even that Jesus was the only one. But there was something about the raising of Lazarus from the dead that had people saying, wait a minute. He did what? How long was he dead? And he's alive now. Still, like he didn't come back to life and then die again. So there was something about that miracle that had people say, could it be that this man is actually the fulfillment of what prophets had been talking about years before? So on Palm Sunday, people came to see, and it wasn't Sunday, there was a whole nother calendar, by the way, and nobody dressed up. And there were no hats. But people wanted to see because they were not looking for transformation, but they wanted their faith in what they had been believing to be renewed. They wanted to be renewed in their faith that a Messiah would come and deliver on all that had been foretold. But when we actually look at then what happened in terms of Jesus kind of coming into the city, it says that they had come to the feast, those that had come to the feast heard that Jesus was coming to Jerusalem. So they took branches of palm trees and went out to meet him, crying out, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, even the King of Israel." He might be. And Jesus found a young donkey and sat on it, just as it is written, "Fear not, daughter of Zion. Behold, your king is coming, sitting on a donkey's colt." Now, what's interesting about this is that if we're looking at this from the perspective of renewal, this whole experience, starting with wanting to see Lazarus, watching Jesus walk in, all led to a spirit of renewal among those people who thought that Jesus might be the Messiah. But it's interesting because what happens with all that happens after that is that those people then are in the presence of transformation. They are set up to a certain degree for a transformation of kind. So renewal does not have to be transformative, but it can lead in some way to a transformational experience. The third myth, and the final one for today, is that somehow we think we can be renewed for free. That renewal just kind of comes, and it shouldn't be hard. It shouldn't cause any emotional distress. It should not, make us think hard and deep about why this particular area of life has kind of gone dead in the first place. Like none of that should be required. It should just kind of happen because I want it to be so. And if you kind of shrink down that conversation, it becomes somewhat childlike to just say, I want it because I want it. It's not necessarily an adult conversation about wanting something that you're yearning for in your life, something that's still there, but kind of dormant, that you want it to be renewed, that you want it to be refreshed. It does require something of us. So let me just share with you something from the science of mind. It says that at first the road may be hard and beset with many difficulties. There may be failures and discouragements, but the end is certain. We fall only to rise again into a greater realization of life and action. And like the pilgrim of old, to renew the journey, we shall need a backbone instead of a wishbone, here as in all other places. And I'm going to say that again because when I read that the first time, if this were a book, I would have thrown it across the room. But I didn't want to buy a new iPad, so I didn't. We shall need a backbone instead of a wishbone, here as in all other places. It is not in wishing, but in knowing and in doing that we shall find the reward of true merit. It behooves each one to make the effort to consciously control the processes of thought. So when we think about the idea of renewal and what it requires that you consciously control your thoughts. for whatever that area is, whether it's health and well-being, whether it's finances, whether it's love and romance, whether it's relationships, whether they be family relationships or people at work, or whatever it is, the first order of business has nothing to do with what you think is agitating you. The first order of business is for you to consciously control your thoughts and be aware of what you are creating in the universe as a reality. I want you to consider these things as you're in this new space and thinking about those things that are part of your renewal, not just because seasons have changed, not just because you're in a new being, but what's your renewal? What's burning in you to be renewed? Consider this. What are the practices that you sometimes wish to engage in? Like, I wish to get out of the bed at 5:30 every morning and get some oatmeal and put on my gym clothes and be at the gym at 6:15 and work out for an hour and a half. I wish that every day. Not much about that happens. But consider, what are the practices within your spiritual life that are your backbone? What are the practices that are the backbone of the sustaining of what you believe, the sustaining of how you consciously control your thoughts? What of that has waned a bit that could stand renewing? You want to be looking to shore up the backbone of the practices that engage you and keep you present to what it is you want to be and accomplish in life. Consider, what are the relationships that you wish for? Are there relationships with people, whether they're romantic relationships or family relationships, that you wish for? Like, I've been wishing for a partner. Wishing. But, wishing, just kind of sitting wishing in my own apartment by myself. Wishing. That doesn't really provide much. Now, if I'm wishing and I'm in the middle of a dance floor, at least I'm in the game. But again, consider, what are the relationships that are your backbone? What are the relationships that people who you know, I may have said this before, a friend of mine gave me a birthday card a few years ago, and on the front were like these 4 women, looked like they might have been from the 1920s, and the outside of the card said, "Your friends will help you move." And you open the card and it says, "Your good friends will help you move the body." Do you know what I mean? Like, people who, when you make that call, they don't ask a question. Those are people who are just going to show up with a shovel. Now, I'm not suggesting that you try and get rid of anyone, but really just talking about the nature of the relationship. That these are the people who you count on to tell you the truth you don't want to hear. They're the people who tell you, "I told you to leave her alone. I told you she was no good. Why are you still holding on?" They're those people. They're the people who will tell you, "I've been listening to you talk about this job for 4 years. If you don't like it, get another one." They're those people. Who are those people in your life that are your backbone and you've let those relationships wane? They're not effective like they used to be. They're not valid like they used to be. And you've had it for a while that it's their fault that the relationship is no longer effective or valid. Not paying a whole lot of attention to your own thoughts about them. Sometimes thoughts of jealousy. Sometimes thoughts of just mean thoughts. The things that we don't really want to say out loud. Because if you said it out loud, someone might think you were a beast. But it's there, kind of like running rampant in your consciousness, creating a whole world for you to live in that has nothing to do with you. Just consider in this community, what is the backbone for you? What do you want to ensure is here, whether you are here or not? Because the thing about a spiritual community is that it provides for those you see, but it provides in ways that you can't even imagine for those who aren't here, for people who are driving by, who have driven by this road every Sunday, and all of a sudden they see life in this building. There are people literally, while we've been sitting here, who are making plans to be here. I hope you're enjoying the comfort of your seat. Because in short order, the space will be renewed. The intention of this space has been renewed with your presence. Don't think that's not going to cause something in the universe. And so you want to be spending some time to see what is your backbone in this community and what can you attend to. One last thought, again from the science of mind. Almighty God, everlasting good, eternal spirit, maker of all things and keeper of my life, thou art all. Infinite presence within, in whom all live, joy supreme, flooding all with gladness, I adore thee. Eternal peace, undisturbed and quiet, I feel thy calm. O thou who dost inhabit eternity and dost dwell within all creation, who dost love through all things and in all people, hear thou my prayer. I would enter thy gates with joy and live at peace in thy house. I would find a resting place in thee, and thy presence live. Make me to do thy will, and from thy wisdom teach me the ways of truth. Compel me to follow thee, and let me not pursue the paths of my own counsel. O eternal and blessed presence, illumine my mind and command my will, that my soul may be refreshed and that my life may be renewed. As deep cries unto deep, so my thought cries unto thee, and thou dost answer. I am renewed and refreshed. My whole being responds to thy love, and I am complete in thee. All my ways are guarded and guided, and I shall live with thee eternally. O lover of my soul and keeper of my spirit, none can separate us, for we are one. So shall thy wisdom guide me, thy presence dwell within me, thy love keep me, and thy life envelop me now and forevermore. I rest in thee. Let that which is vital and effective be refreshed and renewed in you today. Thank you so much.